Where did the cash end up? Sister Wives fans have been watching the Brown clan deal with the ups and downs of plural marriage, massive estates, and financial woes, all while keeping the appearance of a consolidated family fund. The clan had the image of being one household income, putting all dollars together in a single account to pay for homes, vehicles, and other living expenses. However, court records just received by insiders tell a decidedly different story. According to these explosive documents, the so-called family fund that Kody often boasted about was in reality a carefully orchestrated facade. While viewers watched emotional confrontations and financial tension on screen, the man at the center, Kody Brown, was allegedly diverting substantial sums into secret personal accounts. The very money that could have helped his wives and children was, according to these documents, being siphoned off to secure his own private wealth. But this is more than a tale about money. It is about manipulation, betrayal, and the cold truth of a patriarchal clan masquerading as communal finances. This is a tale that is currently playing out as legal observers analyze each word of the filings in court. And that is why you have to keep it locked in, because what you are about to hear not only uncovers a financial fraud, but uncovers the system that made it possible for Kody to control his family for decades. So take a second to hit the subscribe button and enable notifications. All the leaked files, all the insider testimony, and all the court revelations are coming, and you don't want to miss a single moment of it. Let's get to the bottom of this. How a family that seemed financially solid was, by court documents, anything but. The drama did not start with a brawl on television or a sobbing admission, but with a court document that would lead to one of the most surprising exposes in Sister Wives history. Kody Brown, the ex-wife who had been getting more and more frustrated with the finances of the family, filed for an official legal separation from Kody in so doing. She requested transparency regarding the family's so-called communal accounts. First, Kody's team delivered what they said were the complete financial records. At first glance, the documents appeared genuine. They revealed income from the TLC production company, property taxes, mortgage payments, and car payments. But something was amiss. For a family who'd appeared on one of the longest-running reality shows, the figures didn't balance. Where were the special appearance fees, the high-rated season retention bonuses, the incentive payments for the especially dramatic filming? On a premiere reality show, these supplemental revenues are not atypical. They're commonplace. But the official ledgers reported to us almost none of this cash ever made it to the family account. Kody's attorneys were quick to catch on that something was not right. They requested a motion to compel, insisting on full disclosure of all financial transactions related to the Brown Family Entertainment, LLC, the company handling income from the show for the family. It was through this discovery that cracks began to emerge. Subpoenas weren't merely issued to the family LLC. They went as far as Kody's individual accounts, and that is when the tale transformed from a typical divorce battle to a scandal of epic proportions. What these subpoenas revealed, according to individuals familiar with the case, was astonishing. A second, clandestine web of accounts directing funds solely to Kody, entirely bypassing the family fund. The court filings outline a clandestine pipeline of payments disguised by codes in terms that defied their real purpose. Phrases such as producer discretionary fund and talent engagement bonus weren't for the family. Those words were created exclusively for Kody. In brief, the basis of the family's finances, the pooled money that had been held out as the center of their cohesion, turned out to be an absolute fabrication. The strongest proof didn't surface in a gossip website or leaked screenshot. It emerged from someone who'd been within the system for a decade. A former mid-level accountant, who we'll call Alex to protect their identity, had worked on the Sister Wives accounts for TLC's parent company. Alex's testimony under oath painted a picture that was both shocking and undeniable. It was standard practice for the network to give talent retention and cooperation bonuses to principal cast members on hit shows. According to Alex, in the Sister Wives case, that principal cast member was Kody Brown. These payments were made specifically apart from the primary family income and deposited directly into accounts known only to Kody. Alex delivered documents, wire transfers, internal memos, and spreadsheets that accounted for every deposit during a 6-year span, from the time the family was in Las Vegas to Flagstaff. These clandestine payments purportedly totaled almost $900,000. That is almost $1 million Kody accumulated while the family was led to think the collective fund was tapped out. But the tale does not end in figures. The implications ran deeper and were more sinister. The hidden accounts enabled Kody to dictate the script within his own household. When the wives were struggling financially, when dreams were put on hold, and when they begged for help, Kody could say the family fund ran out. Yet from the papers Alex furnished, he had personally sat on hundreds of thousands of dollars, which could have addressed those issues immediately. This was not mere financial incompetence. It was a calculated fraud. Kody's secret fortune gave him an upper hand, keeping him in charge of his family while living a lifestyle secretly supported by the show that benefited from their shared lives. And as Alex testified, the network was aware of what they were doing. By providing Kody with an independent source of income, TLC guaranteed his conformity, his cooperation, and eventually, the continuation of the drama that fueled ratings. It was, in a sense, a golden leash. Kody got money on the down low, and the network got the show they desired. The news caused shockwaves in the case. This was not merely about divorce or a property issue anymore. This was about a patriarch who supposedly fooled his family and the network alike to get richer, while keeping the other wives in the dark. The records Alex submitted showed a jaw-dropping pattern. While Kody had a story of shortage on the national television show, the situation was gloomily otherwise. Expenses that were difficult for the family to pay were usually small. Relative to the hidden payments Kody was taking, consider Meri for instance, she desperately required $40,000 for her bed and breakfast, a figure that was withheld in the name of financial need. Kody made public pronouncements casting the family as being too tight to provide. Meanwhile, at the same moment, wire transfers by TLC were arriving directly into Kody's hidden account. Alex's documents indicated that the family's so-called empty fund could have conveniently given Meri several times over. There was Janelle, who had to reside in an RV on the vast Coyote Pass compound because Kody supposedly would not spend resources for adequate housing. She endured brutal winters with no heating or running water in parts, while Kody's mystery account amassed quietly in the tens of thousands of dollars. The disconnect between his on-camera protestations and the evidence turned up in the papers was extraordinary. Christine's situation was similarly illustrative. She had wished to come back to Utah for stability and support, yet Kody consistently invoked financial impossibility as a reason. But secretly, he maintained a private war chest to which TLC contributed. This war chest that could have provided Christine's relocation with financial potential without depleting the joint family fund. The papers didn't merely pinpoint inequalities, they revealed a conscious deception. Kody's public explanations concerning the family's budget, the "we can't afford it" complaint, and the tightly managed budgets of the wives were all contradicted by concrete proof of a secret fortune. All denials, all fights about finances, and every limitation imposed on his wives had been supported by a secret fund that put power and money solely in Kody's grasp. This was not mismanagement, this was control. By keeping this money in private hands, Kody had control, setting the rate of dreams, the course of funds, and the conditions of his family. The wives were going through financial constraints that he did not have to endure. And the longer it stayed undercover, the tighter Kody's grip was. The storyline that had been presented to audiences for years, a poor communal family doing with what they had, was now destroyed. The documents created a different image, one of manipulation, secrecy, and planned enrichment at the expense of those around him. The court filings didn't end at the revelation of Kody's secret account. They also implicated the network responsible for the show. TLC, the show that showed the lives of the family for years, inadvertently but importantly contributed to making the scam possible. In accordance with Alex's examination, the network paid Kody large sums of money for appearances, publicity work, and family management fees. On paper, they were to defray production expenses and offer fair remuneration to all wives. In reality, most of these funds never reached the joint family accounts. Rather, they went directly into Kody's private accounts which had remained undiscovered until these documents were found. The records revealed several wire transfers identified vaguely as production reimbursements or miscellaneous family expenses. All of these transfers, ostensibly on behalf of the family, were channeled to Kody's use. Furniture buying, travel costs, even children's medical expenses, purportedly joint, were selectively paid. Kody had the authority over what was paid, so that the funds went under his autonomy, not the family's necessity. Most telling was the consistency. The court documents tracked payments over a period of years, demonstrating a pattern. Kody systematically diverted money away from shared use, while publicly presenting himself as financially prudent and even self-sacrificing. This was at odds with the image TLC presented to viewers of a devoted patriarch working around the clock for his family. More disconcerting was proof of deliberate mislabeling. Funds intended for shared family expenses were transferred and labeled as production costs or personal reimbursements. In this way, Kody could maintain plausible deniability whenever suspicion was raised, leaving both TLC and the public in the dark. Christine and Janelle especially pointed out how TLC's involvement unintentionally lent Kody an aura of legitimacy. To the outside world, he seemed to be handling money justly, but the records showed otherwise. The network's payments had been used to finance a private financial empire, while leaving the wives in penury as the show raked in money based on their misery. The court documents concluded that even though TLC didn't directly orchestrate the scam, its payment structure and accountability, or lack thereof, allowed Kody to carry out the fraud in the open. Each episode, each promotional segment, each family moment on television had a secret fiscal undertow, a flow of money subsidizing one individual, while the rest of the family was held back. By this time, it was evident. The family fund was no fund. It was an instrument of manipulation, a personal piggy bank masquerading as group assistance, and TLC's fiscal arrangement had unconsciously enabled it. The discovery of Kody's family fund shook the whole family. The wives, by court testimony, had been assuming that the money was being shared equally. They believed Kody handled the family finances in the open, knowing that their effort, sacrifices, and hard work were being put into the future of the family. Christine, the boldest of them all, told of that moment she read the court papers. "I couldn't believe my eyes," she replied. "All those years, all that trust, and it turns out the money wasn't even going where it was meant to." Her voice, while steady in court, had the emotion of betrayal. Janelle also made a similar revelation. She had always been prudent in her personal finances and contributed immensely to the shared family objectives, ranging from the household expenditures to the children's education. The papers exposed that Kody had been transferring monies that were meant for the children's education, healthcare, and even day-to-day living into accounts. He fully controlled. The court records contained spreadsheets with intricate details, bank statements, and chains of emails. Every entry told a story of intentional cover-up. Home expenses transfers were used for financing high-end holidays, exclusive investments, and even personal gifts to Kody and Robyn, to the wives. Every line item was more than figures. It was evidence of a betrayal they had suspected for years, but never quite understood. The tension in the house ran high. Private discussions, once used to iron out minor disputes, turned into full-blown arguments over trust and responsibility. Some of the wives spoke about late nights and early mornings, poring over bank statements and receipts, in an attempt to reconstruct a puzzle that Kody had deliberately jumbled up. Robyn's involvement in the fund was also questioned. Though Kody was the clear brains behind it, the court questioned whether she was aware of the reality of the fund. Evidence indicated that she indirectly benefited, indulging in luxuries funded from the diverted funds. But whether she actively concealed it was in dispute. Emotionally, the betrayal ran deep. The wives felt humiliated. Not merely had they been duped, but the duplicity had been played out in public view. Every promotional photo shoot, every family moment that had been captured for TLC, now felt tainted by the realization that the funds in the background were being mismanaged. The court records also pointed to a pivotal moment, the wives choosing to officially confront Kody. They first sought mediation, seeking to reconcile the differences in private. But as evidence grew, it could no longer be denied. The confrontation turned into litigation, building to the sensational court decrees that later made headlines. By the conclusion of this revelation, the mood in the home had entirely changed. What was once a unified family with common objectives now carried the burden of financial dishonesty, mistrust, and emotional distress. The family fund had become the battleground, representing all the wives who felt it was unfair regarding Kody's management. The court papers didn't only show that Kody had mishandled the family fund, they revealed the enormous extent of his extravagance. Each page brought new revelations. And for the wives, each dollar traced only deepened the sense of betrayal. The fund, intended to pay for common family bills, had instead been expended on extravagant personal luxuries. Tens of thousands, the records indicated, had been spent by Kody on luxurious hotel rooms on his travels, posh gadgets, and even private golf club membership. The worst of it. These were things and experiences that were unrelated to the needs of the family. One especially incriminating passage detailed the embezzlement of funds intended for the children. Tuition, medical costs, and after-school activities were all underfinanced, or in some instances paid for not at all. Court records demonstrated unpaid tuition fees and late medical payments, compelling the wives to scramble and pay them out of pocket. The papers spelled it out in exact amounts, more than $120,000 in payments missed and unaccounted for. Robyn, who usually joined Kody on these excursions, was featured in some of the entries as a beneficiary. Although she professed to be unaware, the evidence indicated that she had at least luxuriated in the fruits of the mismanaged fund. From designer clothes purchases to high-end dining excursions, personal indulgence and family responsibility had long since become indistinguishable. The emails and text messages from the documents further emphasized Kody's evasive nature. He would deflect questions regarding bills or offer reimbursement that never materialized. In one of the emails, to Christine, a $15,000 payment was airily brushed off as already handled, when, in fact, it had never been paid. The tone, cold and factual, indicated a calculated attempt to keep appearances going while siphoning money. The court also disclosed Kody's tactic of opening multiple sub-accounts in the name of future family projects. Each account bore a description that gave the impression it was for housing, medical emergencies, or family vacations. They were actually empty shells in reality, and the funds transferred into them either went towards personal expenses or remained unaccounted for altogether. For the wives, reading these messages and viewing these numbers was like living the last few years of their trust being stripped away in real time. The betrayal was not merely financial, it was intimate. Every choice Kody had made had impacted not only their bank accounts, but their feeling of safety, their family balance, and their emotional health. Court commentators had called the fund a well-disguised scheme that entailed careful record-keeping and manipulation. It wasn't sloppy or inadvertent, it was deliberate, and that dawned on the wives most painfully. Kody had deliberately deceived them, and the deception had gone on for years. When this was revealed in court, the room was tense. The judge, clearly irritated by the extent of the dishonesty, commented several times on the lack of openness by Kody and the emotional cost to the family. The wives, in turn, started to experience a sense of vindication and anger. They had discovered the truth, but the journey to justice was still in progress. With the court papers revealing Kody's abuse of the family fund, the wives weren't going to sit idly by. They had been made to feel helpless for years, their trust constantly eroded. Now, with solid proof in hand, they started planning to hold him accountable. Christine took the first step. A stickler for details, she worked her way through each of the family's financial statements, bank transfers, and receipts referenced in the court documents. She had one intention: create a case so solid it would demonstrate how Kody used money for personal uses, while keeping the family in the lurch. With each discrepancy she found, the charges gained another chunk of heft, and she collated it all into a chronology of evidence for the court to review. Janelle, on the other hand, worked on verifying the evidence. She followed up on conversations, texts, and emails that illustrated Kody's evasive reactions every time there were questions about money. She also obtained statements from professionals, tutors, medical practitioners, and family accountants who had been impacted by the unpaid bills or lost funds. Her diligence in detail confirmed that the case wasn't merely about dollars. It was about the actual real-world effects of Kody's actions. Meri approached differently. She was skilled in storytelling, and she started recording the emotional toll of Kody's dishonesty. She recorded children being denied things, holidays being ruined because there were funds missing, and trust being lost. Her evidence would prove a strong arsenal, bridging the cold statistics to the lived realities of the family. Robyn's position was more complex. Although she was accused of having profited from the improper use of the fund, she protested ignorance. In any case, she was a key witness in court. Each word she uttered, Each answer to each question was examined to establish whether she had knowingly been part of the fraud, or had herself been deceived, along with the other wives. Both wives coordinated with their attorneys to present the full picture to the court. They were aware that Kody's defense team would seek to minimize or distort the evidence. Preparing for this, their lawyers cross-referenced every financial transaction with documentation, weaving an evidence web that would be hard to deny. Courtroom tactics turned into a game of chess. Wives were ready to bring to light not just the fiscal mismanagement, but also the history of subterfuge and control that Kody had pursued. They were determined to demonstrate to the judge that this was not a string of small errors, but a deliberate plot camouflaged in the mantle of family obligation. The court documents also brought to light new information regarding Kody's efforts to cover up the missing money. In others, he produced fake bills, filed for emergency repairs that never materialized, and even transferred funds between accounts to give the appearance of effective management. The lawyers for the wives brought these deceptions out into the open, referring to them as clear signs of willful fraud. With the courtroom readying itself for the face, tension ran high. The wives were no longer helpless victims. They were active, fact-based, and set on ensuring justice. Every new discovery regarding Kody's expenditure, every piece of paper laying bare his deceit, strengthened their conviction. The family fund that was supposed to be a means for unity and financial security had turned into a sign of deception. And now the tables were shifting. The day of the showdown in court had come. The air was charged, electric with tension, as the judge was about to hear the exhaustive testimony of Kody's suspected financial dishonesty. The wives sat in unison, their faces firm, each sensing the weight of the moment. When the proceedings started, the initial document that was brought forward was the detailed ledger of the family fund. The court was in stunned silence as line after line itemized questionable withdrawals, unexplained transfers, and outlays that favored Kody alone. The evidence created an image of deliberate abuse, which contradicted his long-standing assertion that the fund was being managed meticulously for the benefit of the entire family. The judge, a seasoned individual who had reviewed many complicated cases, leaned forward, looking over the figures and notes. Each inconsistency appeared to trouble him further. "Mr. Brown," he started, his tone assertive, "these entries indicate a degree of mismanagement, or even misrepresentation. That is very disturbing. Can you account for these transactions?" Kody's defense was tepid as he tried to justify his behavior with vague claims of family needs and surprising expenses. But each excuse was immediately refuted by the meticulous documentation produced by the wives and their lawyers. Christine's meticulous chronology and Janelle's confirming testimony gave little leeway for skepticism. The strain heightened as individual instances were brought to light. The judge's eye was caught by an enormous withdrawal claimed as home improvements that never took place. Another transaction, labeled as educational expenses, was connected with extravagant buys that had nothing to do with the children. Each exposure was greeted with a subdued hum within the courtroom and fierce glances from the legal team. Meri's testimony added an emotional dimension to the financial evidence. She described missed opportunities, canceled plans, and the strain placed on the children due to Kody's actions. Her words connected the abstract numbers to real consequences, and the judge took careful note, occasionally nodding as he considered the impact. Robyn, when she was summoned to testify, was grilled on her knowledge of the use of the fund. The court was interested in determining if she had taken an active role or a blind eye. Her responses were line by line questioned, and discrepancies started to appear, ever so quietly changing the perception of her involvement in the scam. The wives' attorneys cleverly focused on the recurring cycles of dishonesty, contending that the family fund was not so much a shared asset, but a tool for Kody's own enrichment. Records, bank statements, and text messages were lined up together, each one supporting a tale of intentional manipulation. The judge's responses were revealing. His face changed from curiosity to incredulity, then worry. Several times he looked back over pages of evidence and questioned the nature of transactions and supposed reasons for some of the withdrawals. The courtroom cameras recorded every detail, emphasizing the theatrics as the enormity of the alleged scam became impossible to deny. At the end of the day, momentum had irrevocably changed. Kody's defense felt strained and defensive, while the preparation, documentation, and emotional testimony of the wives created a coherent, powerful picture of fraud. The family fund, initially put forward as a unifying symbol, was now clearly defined as a vehicle of deception, anticipating what would prove to be a historic verdict. Following days of intense testimony and evidence, the court convened to hear what would be a critical moment in the drama. Tension hung in the air. All the supporters, lawyers, and even the media understood that the judge's initial decision had the potential to redefine the whole story. The judge commenced by presenting the evidence derived from the large documentation and testimonies. In a deliberate tone, he emphasized the most concerning trends: frequent withdrawals. In general terms, suspect emergency expenditures that coincided with personal indulgences and inadequate open book-keeping practices. "Mr. Brown," the judge declared, his tone ringing out over the room, "the testimony clearly indicates that the self-styled family fund was not run on behalf of all the members of the household. Rather, it would appear to have been used largely for private purposes." Kody's face grew taut. He tried to interrupt, but the judge was firm. Each effort to explain his actions was countered by incisive questions and the filed financial reports. The evidence was indubitable. The lawyers for the wives, who had been preparing for just this moment, presented a visual timeline linking the monetary imbalances to Kody's individual expenses. Charts, receipts, and supporting affidavits from family members made a stark case, a pattern of theft that had been ongoing for years. Christine, firmly seated at the front, locked eyes with Kody and gave him a look of determination and vindication. Janelle and Meri sat to her left and right, their bodies a quiet witness to the combined effect of Kody's actions. The judge took cognizance of their pain, observing how the misuse of money had impacted not only their accounts, but the emotional health of the family. A turning point. The judge stopped, reading particularly incriminating evidence, a series of bank payments tagged as family support that were redirected to fund lavish vacations and luxury shopping. He shook his head slowly. "These transactions cannot reasonably be explained as legitimate family expenses," he said. The initial ruling stated that enough evidence was present to proceed with a complete fraud case against Kody for the family fund. The courtroom was filled with murmurs. Some leaned in, others shared amazed looks. Kody's team seemed taken aback for a moment, aware that the case had grown far from what had been initially anticipated. The effect was instant. Speculation swirled on social media. Headlines declared the fund a family scam, and the wives were swamped with congratulatory messages from followers who had been witnessing the drama for years. Kody, on the other hand, was left trying to come to terms with the fact that his story of oneness and guardianship had been destroyed in one courtroom hearing. As the judge adjourned the session, he warned that the final verdict would be forthcoming after careful consideration of all evidence and testimonies. All was now set for a thrilling finale, one that promised to shed light on the extent of Kody's claimed financial machinations and what fate awaited him. Word of the initial ruling went viral. Social media sites exploded with arguments, memes, and videos analyzing each detail of the court proceeding. Headlines blared about Kody's family fund scam, and Sister Wives fans filled the comments with shock, outrage, and speculation. The internet community was fascinated, and for the first time, Kody's financial choices were under the national spotlight microscope. Financial commentators were invited by news agencies to examine the court papers, and their verdict only added fuel to controversy. Most noted that the payments, though in the guise of family support, were full of all the characteristics of misappropriation. Each of the extravagant buys, each of the luxury vacations, and each mystery withdrawal left no doubt in anyone's mind. This fund was never employed for the common good of the family, while the wives themselves spoke up as well, in a cautious and coordinated manner that respected the legal process, yet emphasized their individual experiences. Christine's story went viral to start. She exposed the emotional wear and tear of handling household finances behind the cover of Kody's authoritarianship. Janelle followed up, explaining how mishandling of the fund had personally affected her own finances, as well as those of her children. Meri last reported about her experience, highlighting that the alleged fund had eroded confidence and split family relationships, Court filings, now partially leaked into the media, reported astonishing details. Money designated as emergency family support was spent on private golf club memberships and luxury vehicles. Travel costs aimed at facilitating family togetherness were instead spent on Las Vegas and Caribbean luxury resorts. A pattern of transfers suspiciously coincided with Kody's own entrepreneurial pursuits, indicating a commingling of personal and family finances that was the verge of criminal negligence. Public outrage grew as YouTube personalities and social media influencers dissected the documents, detailing line by line how the supposed scam had worked. Video titles reflected the explosive nature of the revelations, with descriptors such as Kody's secret fund exposed, and the family scam they tried to conceal trending on all platforms. Audiences were especially incensed because the fund had been positioned as a symbol of unity and concern, a purported financial support beam for the whole family. As it turned out, the paperwork described a betrayal of trust, a deception that did not merely impact the wives but the whole family's image. As the media coverage gained momentum, legal analysts cautioned that Kody would not only be liable for monetary sanctions but also suffer long-term damage to his reputation. This media attention added to the mounting pressure in the courtroom, putting Kody further on the defensive. The utterances of the family members, along with the leaked documents, had set a record of dishonesty that could not be brushed aside. The initial ruling had accomplished more than simply legitimize the wives' worries. It had created a firestorm that demonstrated to the world just what had been kept under wraps. The family fund, which was previously hyped as a demonstration of Kody's responsibility, was now equated with dishonesty. The courtroom was charged with emotion. Cameras, journalists, and onlookers crammed into every nook and cranny, waiting for the verdict that had taken national headlines. The judge, an old hand with little tolerance for drama, went over the last evidence one last time. Spreadsheets, bank statements, receipts, and testimonies from both wives. As the ruling was read out, the courtroom went into shocked silence. The judge validated what the court papers had been implying all along. Kody's family fund was not merely mismanaged. It was an intentional misrepresentation. The word scam was utilized repeatedly throughout the official proclamation, serving as a public and legal denouncement of his behavior. The verdict contained several major points. Financial accountability. Kody was directed to refund the stolen funds to the wives in totality, including interest over the years. Asset division. Properties and extravagancies bought using the fund were to be sold and their proceeds distributed equitably among the wives. Legal oversight. Kody was to submit future budgets to an outside auditor so that there would be no more abuse of family assets. The wives left the courtroom obviously relieved but shaken emotionally. Christine, Janelle, and Meri each made statements of responsibility and openness. Their statements were greeted with general support on social media, whereas Kody was largely quiet, a man clearly chastened by the court's decision. In the media outside the courtroom, journalists analyzed every detail. Social media went wild with such headlines as, "Kody's family fund exposed," "Court declares it a scam," and "Sister Wives' financial nightmare now revealed at last." The wives' toughness and excellent record keeping skills were hailed by analysts for helping to unveil the scam. For the fans, the judgment was a turning point. The drama and suspense that had been playing out for months were finally settled, at least in a court of law. But the social and emotional repercussions would take far longer to recover from. Trust had been lost, relationships strained, and the public image of the family forever changed. Kody, formerly the patriarch and financial guardian, was confronted with a new reality. His control of the family finances was taken away, his integrity questioned, and his reputation badly damaged. At the same time, the wives regained not only their financial security, but their story as well. They were no longer observers, passive or otherwise. They were proactive champions of justice, openness, and responsibility. The court records provided the ultimate documentation. The family fund was not what it appeared to be. It was a tale of trust, responsibility, and retribution for dishonesty. It was a reality television story for fans of Sister Wives that transcended television. Though ultimately about reality, it was a legal struggle, a drama played out, and an emotional roller coaster, with all leading to the revelation of one of the show's most polarizing characters. The drama may be over in court, but the saga of accountability, grit, and revelations will forever linger in the minds of the audience for years to come.